Today, we have our Canvas Georgia Executive Director, Giorgi Meladze, with us. He was targeted by state-sponsored attackers as one of the foreign agents. His car was demolished and posters with his face were all over Tbilisi. So who is Meladze and how to introduce you? Giorgi is associate professor at Ilia State University School of Law in Tbilisi. He's director of the Center for Constitutional Research at Ilia State University. He's former Kmara movement activist, Canvas trainer, PhD candidate, and longtime activist. Over the past 2 months, the whole region and Europe and the world has their eyes on Georgia. And the reason for that is that Georgian Dream Party reintroduced this controversial foreign agents law. So, Giorgi, can we start with explaining what is happening in the country right now?
Thank you, Breza. Everybody, I think, saw these magnificent pictures from Tbilisi. Hundreds of thousands marching in the streets every day peacefully and trying to face government oppressions, violence that government-sponsored forces or the government forces are using illegally against them every day on a daily basis. And we see it as it's a magnificent thing. It's absolutely different from everything that we Georgians have seen before in that country. I mean, you said correctly, I'm an activist, and I'm an activist for a long time now, for decades, for at least 2 decades, and there has been nothing like this before. I haven't seen such a consensus that goes across the generations, starting from many like to call it a Gen Z revolution, but yeah, I would not agree. It's not necessarily that generation who is there only. It's everybody now who participates. It's just the young people there in the front, of course, as always. And yes, I mean, on the one hand, we have such a mobilization, such a consensus, and on the other hand, now we obviously see minority government locked in parliament, protected by thousands of armed forces, whether it's police of different levels and different from different regions that they brought in Tbilisi. And filled this parliament building. So now it looks like a castle that has been surrounded and armed, like if it's somehow trying to attract invasion of some outside enemy. And we have these peaceful demonstrators outside who are chanting and demanding what belongs to them, their rights and their peaceful European future. So if we say it briefly, I think this is the picture that we see, and this is a picture which is there for now more than a month, for maybe around 50 days now.
And so we understand, like that everyone in Georgia is involved, as you said. So, but what about international stakeholders and international community in general? Do they really understand the situation adequately? Like, do they know what, if this law is voted, what will it bring?
Well, I think currently at this moment, everybody understands the story, but it is at this moment that the consensus has been reached. The government is definitely trying to divert Georgia from its European path towards Russia. This was not a consensus. This was not the case maybe 2 months ago. This was not the case last year. This was not the case on elections of 2020, when a government of Georgia was portrayed as a dear friend of the West, as a contributor to the Western project. And we, our local activists, had a very difficult time explaining that the government, it was fake, that we lived under the state capture, which was led by oligarch Ivanishvili, Russian Russian-originated billionaire who came to Georgia years ago and kept a very low profile in the beginning. But in 2011 and 12, he suddenly gained power. He managed to build consensus against Saakashvili government and captured power. But very soon after that, he moved to the shadows, and it is from the shadows that he is now ruling the country. So we had very difficult time explaining everybody that this was an absolutely undemocratic process. This was a very shaky process that could any moment move towards Russian orbit, because the process lacked a main quality, democracy. The guy who ruled the country was not elected. And right now it is in our face that we see this reality unfolding. The minority government is trying to not only adopt this law that they calling that we society are calling Russian law. It's not about law anymore, but the government is now trying to make a major change to go against the constitution, which says that Georgia has the European, has the Western ambition to get there to the Western community and divert this country towards the Russian path, towards the former, let's say, back to the Soviet Union path. And I mean, yes, right now the consensus has been reached, but I'm not sure how quick the reactions will be. And here I mean, I'm really glad to see that the American sanctions started to unfold quite fast in just few days. In just few days, the project was introduced. The draft bill was introduced to Congress, and we are waiting still for this response to proceed further, because it seems that Georgian government doesn't have any plans to stop right now. Parliament is in session debating to overrule presidential veto and enact finally this Russian bill that they will be pushing starting from the last year, then with some pause, but continued and pushed it this year starting from April. So we are now, as we speak, there is a session in Parliament, and they are discussing whether to overrule or not. And I expect most likely they will overrule the veto, and the international community now will face a pro-Russian declaration coming from its former ally, from Georgia's government.
Yeah, and like the foreign agent laws is not a new thing, and we saw it in many other places, not only in the region but globally. So why should Georgia be important to others, and why it is different now?
Well, the foreign agent law to me is a symbolic sign that the governments across the Russian border are sending to the world that by this law they want to pledge their alliance with Russia. Of course, we saw the same law in Hungary as well, but it was quickly abolished due to European Union involvement. And the other countries who are in a row, they do not have that luxury to have European institutions trying to preserve the constitutional order. So right now we are somehow kind of joining this wave of pro-Russian authoritarianism, which is very unfortunate for our society, who's trying to escape this vicious circle, who has been suffering suffering authoritarian pushbacks from Russia, different decades at different times, and we have lost people to this struggle against Russia. There's several times Russian occupying forces have organized mass killing of Georgian intelligentsia, of Georgian educated population, or those resisting any the Russian influences. It was 70 years ago, it was 200 years ago, and it was now 30 years ago and 15 years ago, when Russia still tried to show their military presence in the region and in Georgia, and finally started to draw the lines within the country. And we call it this borderization process, that they're organizing 300 meters from our major highway, 40 kilometers from our capital, Tbilisi. We have Russian troops present there. And instead of trying to somehow to energize the process of integration with the West, the current government decided that the best case scenario for them is to show more alliance with the Russian forces. I mean, one could call it a strategic mistake, but we Georgians living there, we who know these people in person, we who have spoken to many of them in person and who know where they originate, where they come from, what are their ideas, we do understand that it has nothing to do with strategic some thinking or some major plan. It's just this small thinking of people who've been corrupted for years, who have corrupt deals with Russian money, and who just try to save their status quo and their wealth in this manner, in such a way.
Yeah, and so having all this in mind and knowing that elections are around the corner, as we finish up, can you tell us like what are the next steps for the citizens of Georgia, and are they actually ready for the next steps?
Well, what we see now is a government who's stubbornly trying to push this law, despite all this wide consensus against it. I expect they will do the same with elections. There will not be free and fair elections in this country. There are very little instruments that are there integral in the system to somehow ensure this fairness and free process. So I think we should expect very rude involvement from government. They will just put the number they like on the paper as a result, and then we have to face it and we have to resist it. Whether we are ready to resist it or not right now, looking at hundreds of thousands of people in the street, I believe we are sufficiently strong and we have power, but we might not be sufficiently organized. And this is our weak point. I mean, there are numbers, but there is very poor organization. And we are kind of learning on our way, but do we have enough time? I don't know. I mean, we really need to work really hard as a society, political parties, civic groups, every small group that is organized in the country. We really need to work hard to somehow come together, have a consensus, what is wrong, where is evil, where is good, and where to direct our anger and our force, and what can be our strategies. Because when we decide to do something, we do it. The point is whether we come to the consensus to make a change. And I think we are there on our way to build this nationwide consensus. If it's not done, then we definitely need to somehow rethink or our future for the next decade or maybe even more, because if we allow government to steal these elections, that means that we might be losing every next election, because for the past 12 years that the government is in power, our democratic structures and institutions got weaker and weaker and weaker. And with these elections stolen, we face maybe some of the institutions to disappear. And now it is NGOs who are targeted. If we lose that, I'm not sure we are left with much options for democracy in the future at all. So now it is really the decisive moment for us. And I think now we all understand it. The point is, are we ready to face it really and have a strategy of unification to target it?
Yeah, so I would say, like, for us, we all know, like, unity planning and nonviolent discipline. I would say that in Georgia you have two, and you're missing the planning part. So that's definitely something to focus on in the upcoming days. Thank you, Giorgi, for your time, and we will talk more about what is going on in Georgia in upcoming days. We plan to talk about foreign agent law from a grassroots, regional, international perspective in next week. So stay tuned and see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.